Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to Easiness, where nothing made easy. So let us start our daily dose for applied biochemistry. And this applied biochemistry is a basic subject for all the foundation like who are studying in PBBSc and BSc nursing and also GNM students, and as well as it is applicable for physiotherapy students, MLT students, MIT student, and all the medical aspect field it is applicable. So this is the foundation subject. So don't worry, we'll make you to understand the subject very easily. So download the app in the Play Store, that is Easiness app. You will get in the Play Store and App Store too. So in the previous session we have discussed about enzymes. In this session we will discuss about unit 2, that is water and electrolytes. So what do you mean by water? If you come across the definition, water is nothing but it is the inorganic compound and which is a chemical formula H2O. Okay, water is an inorganic compound which is made up of, or which is the chemical formula, that is H2O. And this water is it includes the properties like tasteless. Okay, it is a tasteless, odorless and nearly colorless chemical. Okay, it is a tasteless, odorless and colorless substance, and it is very transparent. If you see the water, you can see if you pass the light also, you can easily visible. Okay, that is what water is an or inorganic compound which is made up of, or which is consisting of a chemical formula, that is H2O, and it is a transparent, tasteless, odorless and also chemical, that is nearly colorless. And why you need water, why it is very essential? Okay, let us see that. So water in our human body, that is in the human body, it is composed of 50 to 70%. Okay, it is composed of, or you can say it is constitute of 50 to 70% of total body weight. It is constitute of total body weight, that is 50 to 70%. And why it is very important? It is very important for the maintaining various physiological process, for chemical reactions. To conduct a chemical reaction as well as physiological reactions, you need this water. And I have a question for you, that is case based question, where actually nursing students should know this. For example, a patient comes with an emergency with vomiting and severe diarrhea. Okay, where exactly he is feeling dizzy and confused and tired. So what is the main component that is lacking in his body? Comment that question answer. And next is why, how will you get the water? What is the sources of water? Number one is food. From the food you will get water, that is in the fruits. Example, watermelon and oranges. Oranges is a citrus fruit, and watermelon. In this type of food you will get the excess of or source of water. And vegetables like cucumber, tomatoes, like this you will get the water. And soups, everywhere you can get in the form of water. And beverages like cool drinks, okay, juices, and also milk, tea, coffee, in the form of this you will get the water. And metabolic water, what do you mean by metabolic water? After the metabolism which produces the water, during the energy production where the water is produced. Okay, water inside the body. Okay, inside the body where during the metabolism of nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, in these nutrients, by the process of metabolism you will get some water. So these are the sources of water. How we will get water? One is, the first source is food, by the fruits, vegetables like watermelon, cucumber, like this you will get. And beverages like juices, tea, coffee, like this. And also metabolic process you will get after the breakdown or after the metabolism of nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins and lipids, you will get the source of water. So next is properties of water. What is the properties? How it is? And the first properties of water is universal solvent. What do you mean by universal solvent? The water is called as a universal solvent because which dissolves the any substance, and many substance will be dissolved in water. That is the reason water is known as universal solvent. That is, which dissolves a wide range of substances and also which facilitates the biochemical reactions. This is also called universal solvent. Which is also called universal solvent here? Water is also called as universal solvent. Next is high heat capacity. High heat capacity which regulates the body temperature. Here the water regulates the body temperature by absorbing. What it is absorbing? By absorbing and also releasing the heat. By absorbing and releasing the heat, it is maintaining the body temperature. And cohesion and adhesion. This is also one of the properties of water. What do you mean by cohesion? Cohesion is nothing but which is sticking to each other. Okay. Here water, for example, H2O, you know that the chemical formula of water is H2O. This is one oxygen and another two hydrogen element. Here the hydrogen atoms will be sticking each other. That is called cohesion. Adhesion means on the other surface. Okay, on the other surface the molecule which will stick, that is adhesion. So it also enables the functions like capillary action. Capillary action, what do you mean by capillary action? Capillary action is nothing but the narrow space where the water molecules moves, okay, across the gravity or due to the against the gravity, where the molecules will flow without any external pressure. That is called capillary action. So this cohesion and adhesion, the water which stick to each other, that you call it as cohesion. On the other surface you call it as adhesion, and which facilitates the capillary action. Capillary action means which moves the water molecules in a narrow space, okay, in a narrow space where the movement takes place and without any external pressures, okay, without any external pressures against the gravity, it moves the water. That is what capillary action. Next, lubricant. It acts as a lubricant. Which is acts as a lubricant? Here water acts as a lubricant. What do you mean by lubrication? Which reduces the friction, you call it as lubrication. So which acts as a lubricant in where joints, in the joints and tissues like synovial fluid, okay, in the tissues in between the joints you will get the synovial fluid. So this is what, these are the properties of the water, okay. Next we'll see what are the functions of water, why we need to study why these water and electrolytes are very important. So first is regulation of body temperature. Why it is important? It is to regulate the body temperature. Water is very important. How it is acting here? Though through sweating and evaporation. When temperatures rises, we excrete some waste, that is through sweating, and also that sweating leads to evaporation, okay. That is what regulation of body temperature, one function. Next is transport of nutrients and waste. For the transportation purpose, this is very important. How? The blood, okay, which is mostly water, that is in the liquid form, right, and which carries the oxygen. Blood is carrying the oxygen and nutrients and also hormones. It is carrying hormones throughout the body wherever it requires, to all the tissues, cells, the blood which will be transport. That blood also which is in the medium, that is liquid medium, that is in the form of watery, okay. That is what it helps in the transportation of the nutrients and various waste products. This is also very important function. Next, this is very important in the digestion and absorption. Without drinking water, the chemical reaction inside the body doesn't occur. Okay, it is very important for the biochemical reactions. That is the reason water is very essential for the body. Next, that is digestion and absorption, which is helps to digest the food particles you have absorbed in the saliva. That is also in the liquid medium, right? That is one which is helps to break down the complex food particles into simpler one, and also absorbing nutrients for the absorption of the nutrients which is digested. Okay, after the digestion, the particles or the nutrients which will be absorbed, where it is absorbing, small intestine. For that also the water is required. Okay, and also I told in the digestion and absorption process, the electrolytes, that is sodium, potassium, I have mentioned there. For that also this water is very important. And maintaining the cell structure for the integrity. Okay, for the integrity, the water medium is very important. That is which is essential for the cell shape. For the cell shape and integrity, the water medium is very important. And excretion, what do you mean by excretion? Which is removing the, or which is eliminating the toxic substance, or also and also waste products. That is excretion, which eliminates the waste products like urine, sweat, feces. Okay, for all these the water is very important, and which helps to maintain the acid base balance. For the maintaining the acid base balance in the body, you need water. These all are the functions of water. And also which helps in the lubrication and cushioning. So I said that lubrication means which reduces the friction. Cushioning means, what do you mean by cushion? Cushion means which prevents the mechanical or shock absorb. Okay, you can say shock absorbing. Okay, that is about cushioning, which protecting the organ. So keeps joints, tissues and organs hydrated and functioning smoothly. For the proper functioning of organs, we need water. You can see here the pictures which depicts the where water is very important. Okay, next, this water and water fluid balance. How can you balance the fluid? Okay, so water and fluid balance in the body is crucial. It is very important for maintaining homeostasis. What do you mean by homeostasis? Homeostasis is nothing but where the body's internal temperature is maintained. That is what homeostasis. And also it is help to cellular function. To maintain the cellular function, you have to maintain this water and fluid balance. And overall health, for overall health, you need to maintain this fluid balance. And this regulation of body fluid, how it will be controlled? It will be controlled by the biochemical process involving electrolytes and hormones and osmoregulation. From all this, it will be regulated. So these body fluids, okay, these body fluids which will be divided into two groups. One is intracellular fluid and another one is extracellular fluid. In the name itself, it is indicating intra. Intra means inside the cell. Okay. Extra means outside the cell. So intracellular fluid means the water, the fluid which is present inside the cell, that you call it as intracellular fluid. Extracellular fluid means the fluid which is present outside the cell, that you call it as extracellular fluid. So here in the intracellular fluid, the total 60% or approximately 60% of the total body water is present inside the cell, and the total 40%, that is approximately 40% of total body water which will be present outside the cell. For example, this is the cell. Okay, this is the human body, where exactly this is intracellular fluid, that is ICF, and ICF, the ECF, that is extracellular fluid. Consider this is the cell, the fluid which is present, okay, the fluid which is present inside the cell, that you call it as intracellular fluid. The fluid which is present outside the cell, that you call it as extracellular fluid. How much percent here inside the fluid, that is inside the cell, that is 60%, that is approximately 60%. Extracellular approximately 40%. This is what intracellular and extracellular fluid mechanism. So next, how this mechanism occur, that is mechanism of water balance. How can you balance the water? Through osmosis. Okay, what do you mean by osmosis? Osmosis is nothing but movement of molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration. That is what osmosis, through a semi-permeable membrane. This word is very important. Through a semi-permeable membrane, it is the molecule is moving from lower solute concentration to higher solute concentration. We'll see the proper definition now. Movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane from a region of low solute concentration to the high solute concentration is known as osmosis. For example, consider this is one tumbler or a vessel. Okay, here there is a semi-permeable membrane, and here low solute concentration, and here high solute concentration. Okay, the water molecules which is moving from this side, that is from low solute concentration to high solute concentration, through the semi-permeable membrane, through the porous contain, that is semi-permeable membrane, that is what osmosis. Okay, here the main word, the terminology you should use is semi-permeable membrane and low solute to high solute. How the movement of water taking place, that is osmosis. Next, diffusion. Diffusion means what? Here the water molecules or the movement of solutes from the higher solute concentration to the lower solute concentration. That is what diffusion. Movement of solutes from higher to lower concentration, you call it as diffusion, without any semi-permeable membrane, which will be diffused. For example, you have seen in your +2, that is you are taking one glass of water. In that glass of water you are putting some ink. Okay, you're putting some ink, and when that ink flows, that will be diffusion occur. Okay, that is what diffusion. Then reabsorption. What do you mean by reabsorption? Here the water and electrolytes, where the help of the kidney, the organ kidney, which reabsorbs, which is essential, that will be reabsorbed. So reabsorption is nothing but where the water and other solutes, not only water, other solutes, which will be reabsorbed. Why it is reabsorbed? For various reasons. For example, you need electrolytes, glucose and water. Okay, when you are in dehydration, okay, when your body is dehydrated, at that time the water content should be present in your body. That is the reason some amount of water will be reabsorbed, and also especially in the kidneys, the kidneys will be reabsorbed, the organ which is responsible for the reabsorption. Next, active transport. Here also active means which is actively transporting the molecules from one place to another place. That is where the movement of ions like sodium, potassium, using the ATP. ATP means here energy. Using energy, or you can say on the expenditure of the energy, the molecules or the ions which is moving or which is transporting from one place to another place, that is active transport. For example, that is sodium potassium pump. Where you see this, you can see in the absorption of the nutrients in carbohydrates. I have mentioned that in small intestine there is a sodium potassium pump which actively transports the electrolytes. Then filtration. What do you mean by filtration? This is also movement of fluid through membranes. Okay, movement of fluid through the membranes due to pressure differences. Due to the pressure differences, the molecules or the ions which will be transports, and that is called filtration. For example, there is capillaries. In capillaries, the water will be flowed through that narrow space. These are the mechanism of water balance. Next, if the water is not balanced properly, what are the disorders may occur? One is dehydration. Okay, what do you mean by dehydration? Dehydration is nothing but the loss of water. Okay, the loss of water which leads to electrolyte imbalance. That leads to electrolyte imbalance, that is dehydration. If the water is not present, the electrolytes also will not dissolve. That is what dehydration occur. You can see the picture here. So he is very thirsty and also is eager to drink water. That is what dehydration. Your body needs sufficient amount of water. If it is not, then the dehydration will occur. Then edema. Edema means excess intake of accumulation of fluid, or excess intake of water, or excess fluid is accumulated, which leading to swelling. You can observe the picture here. The normal leg to the foot will be swell, and if you touch that, it will be form some circle, or it will be form some circle. Okay, that is edema. Okay, due to the excess accumulation of water or any other fluid. Next, overhydration. If you are drinking water excessively, what happens? You feel some you don't want to drink other this, and excess of water which dilutes the electrolytes. Okay, and also causes hyponatremia. Okay, this is the condition which leads to hyponatremia. You can see he is very profused to water. He should not drink water again, like that he is feeling. Okay, this is what overhydration. This is about the disorders of the water. Next, we'll come across the electrolytes and what is the role of the electrolytes. What do you mean by electrolytes? Electrolytes are nothing but they are the minerals which is present in the body and which will dissolve in water. Okay, which those electric charges which dissolve in the water, that you call it as electrolytes. So if they ask what is electrolytes, you should write electrolytes are nothing but they are the minerals which is present in the body or in the water fluid which contains electric charges which dissolves in the water, that you call it as electrolytes. And what is the role of the electrolytes? Why it is very important? So electrolytes like sodium, potassium, calcium, and also bicarbonates, these are the electrolytes example, and which plays a key important role in the maintaining water balance. To maintain the water balance, these electrolytes are very important. What are those electrolytes? That is chloride. Number one is chloride, which helps to maintain the osmotic balance. What do you mean by osmotic balance? Osmotic balance is nothing but, for example, there is a cell. Okay, in the cell, inside and outside, the solute concentration will be same. It remains same. Okay, that is what osmotic balance. The inside and outside the cell, the solute concentration will be same, and it is avoiding the excessive fluid. Okay, it is not shifting from one place to another place. Which is not shifting here? The water is not shifting excessively or dangerously. The water is not shifting from one place to another place. Place here, inside to outside, outside to inside. So this is what osmotic balance. So to maintain this osmotic balance, the chloride ion is very important. This electrolyte is very important to maintain the osmotic balance. Next is potassium. This potassium is very important and it is the one of the intracellular factor, that is intracellular fluid, and which is essential for the nerve and muscle function. For the proper functioning of the muscle as well as nerve, this potassium is very important for the nerve signaling. Okay, from one neuron to another neuron, the passing of messages, to that also you require potassium. And also for the contraction of the muscles, you need this potassium. That is why these electrolytes is very important for the nerve conduction and also muscle contraction. And where it is important, where it is present, it is present in the intracellular fluid. And also sodium. Sodium is also one of the main electrolyte which is present in the extracellular fluid, and which is helps to regulate the water retention and blood pressure. Okay, BP, blood pressure, BP, and water retention. What do you mean by water retention? Water retention is nothing but where excessive amount of the water is accumulated. That is what water retention. Okay, in the tissue or cell, that the water will be retained. Okay, to regulate that, this sodium is very important. And next is bicarbonate. Bicarbonate, that is HCO3. These are the bicarbonates, which electrolytes which is important for maintaining the acid base balance. Where it is important for maintaining the acid base balance in the human body, the bicarbonate ions are very important. That is also one of the electrolytes. Next, hormonal regulation. How the hormone will regulate the body fluid and also electrolytes. Okay, that is, one is antidiuretic hormone. You call it as ADH hormone, or also known as vasopressin. Okay, this is the hormone which is released from the hypothalamus. Where it is released? It is released by the hypothalamus, and also which promotes the water retention in kidneys without accumulating the water, that is unnecessary water which is not required by the body. The kidney will be eliminates the waste products which is not required. For this antidiuretic hormone which is released by the hypothalamus and sent a message to kidneys, and those kidneys will be eliminates the water. That is why the hormones plays very important. If this hormone is not properly working or not released proper at the proper time, at the time these kidney will accumulate the waste products and leads to various disorders. And next hormone is aldosterone. What is this? Aldosterones. These aldosterones which will be secreted or which will be released by the gland called adrenal gland. Okay, adrenal gland. Where it is present? You have observed, if this is a structure of kidney, okay, you have seen the top of the kidney, there is some structure, that is the adrenal gland. Okay, there actually the aldosterone will be released, and this which increases the sodium. Okay, when you increases the sodium, the water will be reabsorbed when the dehydration process during that condition, and also for various biochemical reaction you need water. At that time the water will be reabsorbed. For that purpose you need some electrolytes. Which electrolytes? Sodium. If you increases the sodium, the water will be reabsorbed. How it will be reabsorbed? When the aldosterone will be activated. When it is activated, at that time you will absorb the water. Okay, which is absorbing here? The kidney will be reabsorbed. For that reason you need this hormone, very important. And next is ANP, that is atrial natriuretic peptide. That is atrial natriuretic peptide, which is very important hormone that promotes the sodium excretion. If the sodium accumulates in the kidney, that also leads to various disorders. That's why to eliminate or to promote sodium excretion and also to reduce the water retention. If it is excess also, it leads to various disorder. That's the reason the ANP, that is atrial natriuretic peptide hormone, which is important to promotes the elimination of sodium and also to reduce or eliminates the or reducing the water retention content. Next hormone, that is RAS hormone. You call it as RAS hormone, that is renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, what is the abbreviation of RAS? That is renin angiotensin aldosterone system. What it helps? It helps for the regulate the blood pressure. This is very important for the blood pressure. To maintain the blood pressure, this hormone, that is RAS hormone, is very important. And also to maintain the body fluid, you require this hormone. And these are all the hormones, that is ADH hormone, that is vasopressin hormone, aldosterone hormone, and ANP. What is that? Atrial natriuretic peptide hormone and renin angiotensin aldosterone hormone. These are the hormones which is responsible to maintain the electrolytes and also to maintain the water fluid balance. Okay, next, if these electrolytes doesn't work properly, if it is get high or if it is low, what happens? What are the disorders you will get? First is, if the electrolytes, that is low sodium, if the sodium level will be low, at that time what happens? That condition you call it as hyponatremia. Hyponatremia, where it causes the weakness. Okay, it causes weakness, confusion, it leads to confusion and also seizures. Okay, that is what hyponatremia, if the sodium level will be lower condition. If it is high condition, if the sodium level is high in your body, that leads to hypernatremia. What do you mean by hypernatremia? The concentration of the sodium level which increases, and that causes to dehydration and high blood pressure, that is high BP, due to the sodium, which is excessive amount of sodium is present in our body. That is causes called hyponatremia and hypernatremia. These are the two conditions which is low and high level of what is that? Sodium. Okay, next is that hypokalemia. Hypokalemia means low potassium. If the individual intaking the low potassium, like where you will get the low potassium actually, in which sources of food? That is in the banana and watermelon, citrus fruits, cereals, and you can avocado, you can get the sources like this, that is potassium. If the hypo means low, the low potassium, if you are intaking the low levels of potassium sources, then you can get the hypokalemia, that is which causes the muscle weakness and arrhythmia. Okay, this is one of the example. And hypocalcemia, sorry, next is hyperkalemia. Let us finish that is. Okay, hyperkalemia means which increased amount of potassium is there. Okay, which leads to heart issues, that is regarding to cardiac system you can get, and also paralysis, or you call it as paralysis or paralysis. Okay, due to the high concentration of the potassium, that leads to hyperkalemia. Next, hypercalcemia. Okay, what do you mean by hypercalcemia? Hypercalcemia means where the low level, or sorry, hypocalcemia. Hypocalcemia means low level of calcium, which leads to the muscle cramps. Okay, muscle cramps and osteoporosis. Okay, this is the condition of hypocalcemia. Next, hypercalcemia. That is, hypercalcemia means where the excessive amount of the, where the concentration of the calcium is increased. For example, which leads to kidney stones. Okay, and confusion. These are the conditions or the causes you may lead where hypercalcemia occurs. Okay, this is what hypercalcemia and the hypocalcemia and hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, which is the electrolytes is responsible to those disorder. Next is hypomagnesia. Okay, Hypomagnesemia means where the low level of magnesium is present, okay, which causes the muscle spasms, that is cramps, and irregular heartbeat, okay, which leads to irregular heartbeat. And hypermagnesemia means which is high level of magnesium, okay, which causes the high level of magnesium that leads to the low blood pressure, okay, low blood pressure. And lethargy means you don't have any interest to do any work. For example, you have to lie whole day on the bed, and also you don't have any interest to do any work, okay, that is what lethargy. So these all are the effects of the electrolytes. This is what about electrolytes and water balance. So in this class or in this session, we have discussed what is water and why it is very important, and what is the function, and how it is the body fluid is, that is intracellular, extracellular, and also the mechanism of the water balance. And we have discussed the role of electrolytes, why hormone is very important, and also we have discussed about the some causes, like if it is the electrolytes is low and high, what are the conditions may occur. So this is about the water and electrolytes and how it is affect and the disorder. So if you want to study in detail, and also if you want to understand in a very simple way, just download the Easiness app in the Play Store and also register, and you can see only in 1500 you will get the courses for PBBSc, BSc Nursing, MLT students, physiotherapy student, BSc Nursing student. For all the courses that you can get 1500, you can access very easily. And if you have any queries, you can contact us through this email ID, and also you have a contact which is screening in the screen that is visible on the screen. Okay, thank you.